Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. Okay, are we ready? Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3.
John, you're live.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is John Hines. I'm the founder and CEO of the Hines Family Foundation for Education, Innovation, and Service. And today it's my honor and pleasure to talk with you a bit about my 2 or 3 of my favorite subjects: space, technology, and STEM education. I want to tell you a bit about an initiative that we've started in the foundation. And my name is John Hines. I'm the founder and CEO of the Hines Family Foundation for Education, Innovation, and Service. And I'd like to give you just a little about my 2 or 3 of my favorite subjects: space, technology, and STEM education. I want to tell you a bit. Turn off some things.
John,
Okay.
you're live. Go.
Am I okay now?
Yes, yes.
Do I have an echo?
No.
Okay, shall I start over?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. Hello, my name is John Hines. I'm the founder and CEO of the Hines Family Foundation for Education, Innovation, and Service. It's based in Atlanta, Georgia. And our real point is to see how we can help and motivate STEM learning for underserved and underprivileged students. I want to thank my colleagues, Don James and Marsha Maxwell, who are associates with me in the foundation. They gave a wonderful discussion. If you recall the book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why, you'll find that I think Donald gave you an idea of the why, Marsha gave you the what, and I think I want to give you now some idea of the how and how we're going about addressing these issues. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and how we got to this point. I've had a long career, let's see, now into my 70th year. Many work locations, many projects and activities. I've lived in several places. I've learned many things. I've studied and worked quite a few things. And I'd like to say I've done quite a few things here. I won't go into all of those, but I'd just like to give you sort of my employment flow and my education flow. I'm a graduate of Tuskegee University in Alabama for undergraduate school in electrical engineering. I attended Stanford University for graduate school for master's in electrical and biomedical engineering. I was an Air Force ROTC graduate. I went to, my initial career was at SRI International doing research work in biomedical activities, 12 years in the Air Force, and then the final end of my career before retirement was with NASA for about 37 years. Once I retired, I started a small consulting activity, but my real passion and upbringing being in education, that sort of evolved into the Hines Family Foundation for Education, Innovation, and Service. And that's the subject I'd like to discuss with you a bit today. So a bit about the foundation. The mission of the foundation, the Hines Family Foundation, is to enable underserved and under-resourced students, groups, and communities to become viable contributors to and beneficiaries of the 21st century global workforce through STEM 4.0 based learning and innovation. Many of you may wonder now, what do I mean by STEM 4.0? And I'm going to leave you in suspense for a minute and tell you about that just in a minute. I also want to tell you about one of our programs within the foundation, Mission 3D. You think of the analogy about the iceberg, and what you see above the water is one part, and what you really don't see is a lot of the hard work that goes along underwater. So Mission 3D is our outward outreach and education arm of the foundation, but there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes and behind that I'd like to describe to you in this discussion. So what do? We use space as a learning and training motivator. We develop and apply STEM 4.0 learning packages. We want to train teachers to help students learn. One of the things I think you heard a bit earlier that, from Marcia is that as you try to take these technologies to schools in certain areas, they were not able to be fully used because in a lot of cases, the teachers and instructors did not have the skills to be able to convey this knowledge and information to their students. So we have employed and instituted a two-pronged approach of training the teachers to help the students, as well as to using space as a motivator to enable the students to pursue their academic objectives. We focus on underserved students. Our tagline, as you see at the bottom here, is to help underserved students realize their 21st century STEM 4.0 goals. We really target underserved, underrepresented population groups, primarily initially in the US, as we've gotten started over the last 3 years, women, African Americans, Latin Americans, disabled, disadvantaged, not to limit only to those, but that's where we've started with the foundation. And let me tell you a bit more. I mentioned I would tell you a bit about STEM. You heard Donald talk about STEM and wondering where does it go, where does it fit. Marcia had some comments about STEM. We've seen in the educational world, we started with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. That evolved to STEM 2.0, which added a project-based learning component. Next iteration was STEAM to add the arts into it. What I suggest is that in addition to that, adding a research component, which I label STREAM, and then another component of managing, making, and actually life cycle project and product development that I call STREAM MMS, which was a mouthful. And so I've kind of coined the term STEM 4.0, and that's based a bit on the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, because those are the products and the tools that are being used in the 21st century. And how do we educate the 21st century workforce without informing them of those capabilities? So let's go back to a little point here. We institute a one-room schoolhouse learning approach as an integrated learning work group. And I base that on the one-room schoolhouse approach. And just to give you a bit of Americana, since we have an international audience here, in the 19th and early 20th centuries, most American students attended a one-room schoolhouse. And I'm sure that might be the case internationally and globally as well. But in that case, a single teacher would have students in the 1st through 8th grades, taught them all. They would have all the various lessons, all the various classes. All of the students were exposed to all of the lessons and all of the activities of all of the grades. And we've kind of taken that as the Hines Family Foundation model for our STEM 4.0, in that we would allow students at all grades to work concurrently and be able to proceed and work at their own level under the guidance of mentors, facilitators, and experts. We hope, and our aim would be to provide common facilities, tools, and learning products at increasing levels of sophistication as they evolve through their learning careers and work to life cycle mission, products, and deliverables. And I think this integrated learning working group, although it started a year or so ago, I think this approach, the blended distance learning approach with hands-on tools and projects, is particularly relevant in this COVID-19 era and beyond. So in a way, I'd like to say that the foundation implements a one-room schoolhouse approach for learning to design, build, and operate stuff. That's my technical term for projects and missions. So let me tell you a bit about how that goes. We have also defined what we call a continuity model, a pathway, a pipeline, and professional to address and support students all the way through from their early educational points, all the way through their early career professionals, in a sense, going from grades 3 to 23, if you will. For each of these elements in the K-12 STEM pathway, STEM 4.0 learning area, what we call the pathway, really focuses on students primarily at high school level, pre-college, from grades 9 to 12, with on-ramps and entry points at middle school, grades 6 through 8, and early exposure even for grades as low as 3 to 5. The academic pipeline, then, we hope to have an efficient transition into the academic grad and undergrad and community and college specialist technical schools, and then have that then also lead and provide assistance and support as they begin their early career professionals in the first 3 to 5 years of their career. We have recently instituted 3 campaigns: SILVA, Space Innovation and Learning Virtual Academy; Assets, the Artemis Small Spacecraft and Exploration Technology for Space; and PULSE, the Post-University Learning Systems Evolution, to really facilitate this whole area. And I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go. But first, I want to let you know that it's really about the students. And I want to tell you about a short, I guess the video won't show, but in August of 2018, we hosted our first Train the Trainer workshop. And this was sort of the first activity that we did that brought together our one-room schoolhouse approach for teachers. In this case, we had elementary, middle, and high school teachers. We had university professors. We had practicing researchers, surface subject matter experts, all in a room. And we were trained with a technology that we have worked with a South African company, X in the Box, that I'll tell you more about as well. But in that, we had a 2-day session where we trained all of the persons in the room as a collective group to learn this basic tool that we wanted to use as our baseline tool. Well, the elementary school teachers from Mapleton Elementary School in Cobb County, Georgia, went back after that day on the 28th and 29th of August, in 2018, and began to address this with their 4th and 5th grade students. What happened with this is, about 6 months later, because we are affiliated with the Georgia Space Grant Consortium at Georgia Tech, about 6 months later, we brought 10 of those 4th and 5th grade students to the Georgia Tech Georgia Space Grant Consortium annual conference with all of the university participants, the companies, the corporate participants, and the students themselves actually put on a science fair and demonstration and demonstrated the technologies that they had learned in that area. And it's just a model and indication of, if you inform the teachers in the proper level, then they're able to convey these next generation technologies to their students. In 2019 and 20, we've now had the pleasure of becoming acquainted with Christopher L., who is now our KID ambassador. I'll tell you more about Christopher. You'll see him here staffing a demonstration booth that we supported at the Space Innovation Symposium at Georgia Tech last year. But just a bit about Christopher. He's 11 years old. He's just finished 5th grade. He's now the Hines Family Foundation KID ambassador. He's a citizen scientist. He does conservation. He does red tide surveillance. He's a Mars Generation student ambassador. He's a certified life climate speaker. This is a model of, who I wanted to be when I grew up and who I still want to be when I grow up. And you'll see here him as he's demonstrating our technologies and staffing our exhibit booth. Here at the Space Innovation Symposium, Charlie Bolden, the former administrator of NASA, was a keynote speaker, and you see Charlie here with Christopher and Olatunde Sani. I'll tell you about him in a second, but I'd like to say here is, in one way, past, present, and future. So Olatunde Sani, Georgia Tech, he's our Foundation Stipend Fellow. He's a PhD candidate at Georgia Tech. He's just finished his coursework and is now working on his thesis project. But in addition to that, as a Hines Family Foundation STEM 4.0 ambassador, he has been the lead trainer and facilitator to train students, teachers, provide guidance on how to use the tools and products that we are developing. You see him here in a teacher training situation, and here you see him also with Dr. Marsha Maxwell, who you just saw, in giving hosting a program with the Horizons program in Georgia this past summer. So that's an idea of sort of an instantiation, if you will, of our continuity model there. Now, let me give you a bit of some discussion about our science and technology scope, which is the basis for the activities that I want to tell you about that the foundation is conducting. We really are now focusing on 5 science disciplines: weather, climate, environment, physical sciences, and life sciences. We had identified originally technology product track areas in space, science, automation, product development, and applications. And we'd identified 5 technology domains and disciplines. The primary one, Moon, Mars, and Beyond, which evolved into the initiative that we are talking about during this presentation. But I want to let you know also that we, in addition to the space initiative, we have a couple of other initiatives that are also relevant: sustainability and Industry 4.0, and the linkages for those. If you look at the National Academy of Engineering's Grand Challenges on Engineering, you'll find quite a few of the activities that we will identify in the Space Initiative and the other initiatives as well. Sustainable Development, our Space Down to Earth Sustainability Initiative addresses the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And of course, Industry 4.0 reflects the 4th Industrial Revolution, which has evolved from the mechanization, the mass production, to computer automation, and now the cyber-physical systems, which make that complement and are the subjects of efficiencies in the future 21st century workforce. But just to focus really on the theme of today is From the Earth to the Moon, Mars, and Beyond. It's an experiential STEM 4.0 learning using space as the motivator. And it's our hope that through this program that students could learn through mentored hands-on project experiences a full range based on their space or scientific interests, or use this as a stepping stone to go into other areas of interest. So there's possibilities to do science and technology experiments, to learn about Internet of Things and robotics, to focus on balloons, satellites, swarms, and the whole gamut of those technologies and products and skills that are necessary in order to do space missions. So in a way, we're really teaching kids and students how to design, build, and fly space stuff. And it really is rocket science. These are real projects, they're real hands-on STEM experiences and hands-on learning activities. So the core training, we have a 5-part training paradigm that we're putting together in a workflow. And we take those 5 science discipline areas and looking at space destinations, with our destination of Earth being our primary one and the basis from which we depart from all other destinations. And then we have some hands-on project learning areas that we use to really focus on the learning that you might learn, the students might learn in general knowledge capture, but then to have practical hands-on experiences that help them to really see and do hands-on learning based on the things that they are doing. And so I'll tell you about one of these in particular and allude to several others that we have in the works and from there. So those activities, I've described the destinations, the science objectives, the hands-on project experiences. I think I'd like to tell you that our focus for the foundation is really on designing and demonstrating and deploying the learning packages. I mentioned the fact that our Mission 3D program is the front end of the activity, but the under the water in this iceberg are developing the learning projects, developing the hands-on project experiences, developing the tools and the products to affect this learning capability. And it's now been exacerbated a bit because of the COVID-19 area, where heretofore there were activities that could be directed to the school and work in school with students. Now we've had to reflect back and think about how to do this in a distance and remote learning mode. So the first and the primary learning area is one that we call SubOrbital and Orbital Space Systems, SOSS. And this really focuses and emphasizes the from the Earth to the Moon, Mars, and beyond theme. In this particular area, it's a graduated multi-level activity with multiple school learning nodes, multiple life cycle learning pathways. We start again with the plug and play technologies, the X in a box type tools and technologies that I'll tell you a bit about more, but then we use those for environmental and climate and local weather and other classroom and field experiments, progressing to tethered low altitude balloons, progressing then from there to higher altitude suborbital balloon release, and in some cases going to suborbital vehicles, amateur rockets. And as Marcia described, there have been instances where there actually have been and will be science payloads, not only on the International Space Station, but on actual free-flying space platforms such as CubeSats. In addition to that particular learning area, there are several other learning areas that I'll just point to. Extreme environment detection systems that we have been developing with the SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence program, with remote distributed hands-on tools, again, still using the X in a box type technologies there. We are looking at technologies for Internet of Things and field agriculture and sustainable crop growth and farming using various technologies. And of course, the STEM 4.0 learning technologies, which address the full range of the STEM technologies and Industry 4.0 technologies, Internet of Things, augmented reality, cybersecurity, cloud computing, 3D modeling, and so forth. And finally, one of the areas that I have more expertise and interest in is in life and medical and biological technologies, which are really the front end as we're looking to do human exploration to the moon and beyond, but also of interest for our quality of life and health and well-being on Earth. I mentioned earlier several campaigns. One of the campaigns that we have this year is called SILVA, Space Innovation and Learning Virtual Academy. Dr. Marshall Maxwell, who you just heard prior to me, is the co-investigator on this and working to develop tools for this. And the idea is to apply these 21st century foundational tools, such as embedded systems, smart systems, robotics, advanced manufacturing, virtual and augmented reality, and apply those to learning areas such as the SOSS program there through a series of graduated areas. Donald James mentioned student challenges. So we have an early phase 1 through 3 there, and as they succeed through that, maybe to address challenges that could take them forward, and then going forward to the more sophisticated and more involved and more costly, if you will, projects into space. We're fortunate to have the collaboration and teaming with Georgia Tech and the Georgia Space Grant Consortium on this pathway, with the ultimate goal of getting more students at the K-12 and pathway level ready to go into the academic pipeline. And so leading to that is another program that's assets based on the Artemis program, which is the NASA program of return to the moon in the 2024 timeframe. Artemis is was the sister of Apollo in Greek mythology. And so that the Artemis mission has as a NASA objective to also put the first woman on the moon. And so we're also looking to address those areas again at the academic level, at a higher level, but taking the same types of foundational technologies, the same types of hands-on learning experiences, but now applying those to real space mission development designs, and again, using student challenges as we try to stimulate and affect and support advancement into the 21st century workforce. So why am I telling you all this? Well, because this is Campus Party, and I know some of the history and some of the things that have been done in Campus Party and coding and addressing, bringing together students who have expertise and interest in coding and in technology applications and so forth. We have need for coders. We have activities. With the X in a box technologies, we primarily focus on Arduino and Raspberry Pi type technologies, microbit, other points as applied to drones and satellites and printing and Lego Mindstorm type activities. We have certain things that we've developed. We have a lot of ideas there, but we could really benefit from like-minded individuals that really want to join us and help us in coding and developing some of these tools and learning experiences. In addition to coding, we have several projects. The Silva project that Marcia is working on is looking to develop online digital learning packages for high school, pre-college, and upper middle school, again, using our 5-stage enterprise and the same tools that we have. The Artemis program assets I just mentioned has need for projects at all the subsystems and multiple levels of activities. There's a possibility for a project called ICON, Image Capture and Outreach Nanosatellite, which could be a student-developed imaging satellite for low Earth orbit, where students could develop both the satellite, the operational protocols, but also develop hands-on applications, such that, for instance, when the satellite passed over your location anywhere on Earth, it will send you a signal and tell you it's in your neighborhood and send you a picture and talk to you. And then finally, there's a technology company called FarmBot that makes online open architecture farming and agricultural control and management systems, which could be of interest for remote monitoring, optimizing crop growth activities, and sustainable crop activities in there. So we have these activities. We've got a head start on some of them, but we need help. We need virtual project team members, and I hope we could interest you in, some of you in participating and playing with us. So our workforce vision is to enable 21st century technology skills and engineering skills and the full range of skills necessary for a life cycle project, project management, engineering, robotics, science and technology, manufacturing and production, clouds, mechatronics, engineering, and so forth, and to support global applications and service areas such as you see on the right here: health and well-being, quality of life, 21st century workforce, economic competitiveness. I left off the most important one in some areas to get to this point is research and development. But these are some of the things that we try to see as a continuum to get from one place to the other. And let me just, again, another dream that we have is to create a hands-on project experience mobile laboratory. And let me tell you about the heritage from that. Again, I mentioned that my undergraduate work was done at Tuskegee Institute at the time, now Tuskegee University in Alabama. It's also my home originally. George Washington Carver, who many of you I'm sure have heard of, who did so much science and did so much work in developing tools and capabilities and products derived from peanuts and sweet potatoes there. Well, during his tenure at Tuskegee, he had a movable laboratory, a Tuskegee Institute movable laboratory. And in this, they would outfit a wagon that they would have seeds and various agricultural farming tools and so forth, and take it to the community, and take it to the rural areas where they were underserved and did not have access to these kinds of technologies and capabilities. And that's been a model for me for the one-room schoolhouse, where my mother taught as a one-room schoolhouse. And even to bring this closer to home, my mother was a lab technician for George Washington Carver during the 1940s. This has inspired me to think about these things and give me the ideas to create something such as the Hope Mobile Laboratory. And, you know, there are some examples at UC Irvine, another educational workforce and training company, Base 11, of which I'm on their technical advisory board, has outfitted a van at UC Irvine that has the tools necessary to deploy liquid rockets to the field for students to safely set up, operate rocket launchers there. And I'd like to see this type of model be applied for the foundational technologies that we have been talking about here with the foundation, as I've just described. So just as in closing, I'd like to say a bit about who we are. I mentioned that I'm the founder and CEO and Chief Technical Officer. Harold Boone Jr., an attorney in Atlanta, who's also the son of one of my longest childhood friends, is also a member of the board. And you met Donald James 2 talks ago as the Director of Education and Outreach. But we're also fortunate to have many members and representatives, Dr. Stephen Ruffin and Laura Skilling and Elisa Watson from Georgia Tech and the Georgia Space Grant Consortium, Tunde Sani, that I described as our engineering fellow, Judy Sandrock of the X in the Box Company, Dr. William Edmondson of North Carolina A&T, Ms. Rhonda Lyons of NIRAD Incorporated in Florida, who's also the mother of Christopher, our kid ambassador, Marsha Maxwell, who you just heard a presentation from, and Alana Davis, also at the Cobb County School District, who has facilitated a lot of the work that we've done early on. And of course, we have partnerships with various companies in addition to Georgia Tech and the Georgia Space Grant Consortium. So in closing, I just want to let you know that and state that our plans in the future, I've tried to describe some of the activities of the Hines Family Foundation and what our plans and objectives and our scope to address and maybe facilitate and enable underserved, underrepresented students to be viable contributors in the 21st century workforce. These are some of our plans to facilitate STEM initiatives and projects, to create new STEM learning pathways, expand learning campaigns, increase collaborations, and the bottom line is to move students through the STEM 4.0 work pipeline into the 21st century workforce. So I'd like to ask you to consider this a call to action. I think I've described how we can help students learn, but we can't do it without your assistance. We need your expertise and support to make it happen. And that does not necessarily mean just funding. You know, we would like to see you share your contacts, be subject matter experts, volunteer with the team, contribute tools, help us code, help us run projects, help us reach students and go forward in the future. With that, I'd like to conclude and basically thank you for the opportunity to present these activities and present the Hines Family Foundation to you, and hope you'll see something interesting to come and join and play with us. Thank you.